Lesson 8.4, quadratic equations that have a number in front of the x squared. So they no longer have an a equal to 0. So if you notice, unlike in 8.3, there's a 5 in front of the x squared. Now the easiest way to get rid of that 5 is to take it and multiply by the 10, the number at the end. Now that will remove the 5 from the x squared. And the resulting problem will be x squared plus 27x plus 50. Now that there's no number in front of the x squared, we will focus on what numbers make 50 that add up to 27. And it looks like we've found it. 2 plus 25 is 27. So those are the two factors I'm going to use. So I'm going to write x plus 2, x plus 25. Now, I can't stop there because in the beginning, if you remember, I multiplied by 5. So now I have to go back and divide by the number I multiplied by. So I'm going to divide both numbers by 5. Now, in the case of 25, it works out nicely. 25 divided by 5 is 5. However, 5 does not go into 2. So what we're going to do is we're going to slide that denominator up in front of the x. And I'm going to make that factor 5x plus 2. So our answer is 5x plus 2, x plus 5. So if you multiply in the beginning, you have to divide at the end. So when we look at B, you should pause if you'd like to multiply by 24. That's 72. So pause here and figure out what times what makes 72 that adds up to negative 22. And then don't forget to divide at the end. Well, we have 1 in 72, 2 in 36, and let's see, what else do we have? 3 and 24. Next one will be 4 and 18. And I think that's the one we're looking for, because 4 plus 18 equals 22. However, since it's negative 22, I'm going to have to make both the 4 and the 18 both negative. So I'm going to have x minus 4, x minus 18. Now don't forget, we have to go back and divide. Now, 24 doesn't go into either one of these numbers. Doesn't go into 4 or 18. But before you slide the denominator in front of the x, you need to reduce the fractions. Four over 24 can be reduced to 1 over 6. 18 over 24 can be reduced to 3/4. It's at this point, now that the fractions are reduced, we will slide the denominator into the front. 6x minus 1, slide the denominator. 4x minus 3. And that is the factors for this problem. Okay? All right, I got 2 more on the next slide. Now, if you'd like to pause here and try C, would be a good time. Okay, so 6 times 7. That's 42. And now I'm going to figure out what times what makes 42. 1 and 42, 2 and 21. Oh, I think 2 and 21 is going to make 23. But once again, 2 plus 21 may be 23, but I need a negative 23, so I'm going to make both the 2 and the 21 negative. So I'm going to have n minus 2, n minus 21. Now, let's divide by the same number I multiplied by, which was 6. Now, these fractions can be reduced because 6 doesn't go into 2 or 21. So 2 over 6 will reduce to 1/3, while 21 over 6 will reduce to 7 over 2. Now slide your denominators. The 3 becomes 3n minus 1. 3 moves up. The 2 will slide up, and I'm going to get 2n minus 7. So if you'd like to try D, go ahead and multiply by 20 times the 9 and see if you can figure out what are the factors. So go ahead and pause it here if you'd like to try on your own first. So p squared minus 31p equals negative 180. Now I have to work through the ways to get negative 180. Keep in mind that since it's negative 180, that you have to check both numbers to get the negative 31. You can make a negative 1 or negative 180, a negative 2 and 90, or negative 90 and 2, a negative 3 and 60, or negative 60 and 3. Because if it doesn't come into you right away, you should check each number down the list. Using a calculator, divide by 2, divide by 3. Next, divide by 4. So I think 4 and 35. No, it's 4. No, I'm sorry, it's not 35, it's 45. Negative 4 and 45. Negative 45 and 4. Negative 5 and 36. Negative 36 and 5. And I think we finally found our answer, because negative 36 plus 5 equals negative 31. So systematically divide by 2, 3, 4, 5. If you need to, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Keep going until you check every option. So our factors will be p minus 36, p plus 5. Now I have to go back and divide. 20 does not go in evenly to 36 or 5, so I will reduce my fractions. 36 over 20 will reduce into 9 over 5. And 5 over 20 will reduce to 1/4. Now slide your denominators up. So we get 5p minus 9. And slide the 4, 4p plus 1. And those are the factors. All right, so I got one more slide with 2 more problems. Now, before we start this one, I want you to take a good look at the numbers, the coefficients of the problem. Now, unlike the 4 previous problems, this problem and the one next to it have something in common. Hopefully you've noticed at this point that all of the numbers can be divided by 4. So since you can divide by 4, you need to divide by 4 to factor out the 4. 4 is the GCF, the greatest common factor. So 4 divided by 4 will just make x squared. 24 divided by 4 will make 6x. And 32 divided by 4 will make 8. And don't forget, see, I put my 4 in front of the parentheses. Now you need to figure out and factor the trinomial inside the parentheses. Which two numbers multiply, make 8, add up to 6. I think we see that is 2 and 4. So my factors will be x plus 2 and x plus 4. You see, by dividing first by 4, there was no longer a number in front of the x squared, so I didn't have to multiply it by the last number. So if you can divide by the first number, you have to do that first, and that will make the problem much shorter. So if you can look at B and figure out what number goes into all of those, you should go ahead and divide and try to do B first. Okay, let's see what you got. Hopefully, you've divided by 2. 2 cancels out with the other 2 and leaves us with v squared. 12 divided by 2 will result in 6, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Now we try to figure out and factor the trinomial inside the parentheses. The only way to get 5 is 1 times 5. And 1 times 1 plus 5 does equal 6. But since it's negative 6, I need both 1 and 5 to be negative. So my factors will be the 2 in the front, v minus 1, v minus 5. And that's the answer. So keep in mind, if you can divide, always do that first. Always look for the GCF. If you can factor out a GCF, the problem will be much shorter. Otherwise, times the first number by the last number and then divide. And that's the end of this lesson.